Alright, YouTube, this is my rant. I have a lot of stuff to say. As always, I apologize for being messy and sloppy, but if I tried to make things more exacting, it just becomes a big old mess. Okay, um, for the 2012 campaign, the Republicans are going to take on Obama. It's a fallacy that most people are moderate. We're a nation of extremists. Look at the movies like to go see. Big guns and big bombs and big boobs and all this kind of stuff. Um, I've observed most people aren't so much moderate, like the middle 60% or whatever. They just know how to keep their mouths shut. Or they aren't somebody that explores or elaborates in their views a lot. Um, both sides have this argument they represent the mainstream. Conservatives like today, Rush Limbaugh was saying how it was a hollow victory for the liberals that Obama's in office because if he was a liberal and the United States was a liberal nation, he wouldn't be backtracking on certain issues. Bill Maher said the same thing. When George W. Bush was in power, he said that if the liberal leaders properly articulated liberalism, it would identify with most Americans because they're liberal and stuff. So both sides do that. They always have an excuse when the other side wins, and it gets kind of tricky and all this kind of other junk. But um, I've observed, and I've seen this in a lot of people, they have a super amoral practicality. What happens is, like I said earlier, they know how to keep their mouths shut so they're never branded an extremist, but they have kooky views that keep to themselves. And only when someone, well, like me, because I've had some conversations with these kind of people, you dig and dig into their views, they come up with the most nonsense, kooky garbage you can imagine. But like I said, these people never be branded extremists because they know how to keep their mouths shut. They know how to take care of the surface stuff in their life. So their spouses, their parents, their noble employees, and everything about their life is chaotic and in disarray. I call that a scattered commonwealth. There was a quote that I didn't like on over here in Louisiana on a AOC, Acadiana Open Channel, cable access TV. One guy said that a low voter turnout is good because that implies that things are so good in the nation that most people are happy and satisfied that there's no need to go vote. So this is ridiculous because you have all these stats. Most people aren't happy today. Most marriages aren't happy today. From the conservative standpoint, the morals are going to hell, you know. But it's harder to find your niche in life today. Most people aren't happy with their career or even have a career. All this stuff is going on. It's estimated that 1/3 of women get raped at some point in their lives. Domestic violence and crime rate and such. But it's like people become deadened and apathetic. Not because things are neato peachy keen. It's because they just learn not to care, or they learn to numb themselves in their own dreary lives. People need to explore. This middle 20% that determines the president's race every year, because 40% is always Republican, 40% is always Democrats, with the middle 20. This middle 20%, they're not benevolent and they're not infallible. They're just people who need to explore their ideals more. And a lot of people might say, well, it's about winning them over, because if you can't get in power, it doesn't matter what you stand for because you're never going to be in power to implement it. Okay, fine, it's a half-truth, but I agree with it nonetheless. So why can't we do that to the two sets of the 40%? Why do we have to settle for only the 20%, the middle 20%? So this idea in the caucuses and primaries, the big deal is, let's go with someone who can win, because you don't want to nominate someone who's predestined to lose. It sounds logical and that kind of stuff, but what happens is you forget the idea that the underdog can come across articulating their arguments and stuff and try to sway people over. So that's why I'm against reading the polls and just going for the strongest one. You go with who you want to go go get the nomination. That's it, period. You don't just listen to what other people spoon feed you. Something like that is the blind leading the blind. I mean, like for the 2000 race, George W. Bush was practically the pre-anointed, predestined nominee in 1997. I mean, it was ridiculous. GWBush.com spoofed him and said the 10 Commandments in school. Number 1, I am the Lord, your front runner. Thou shalt have no other nominees before me. and all that garbage. And you have the internal party strife with underdog never get a chance, and they get excommunicated from the party and this kind of stuff. So for the 2012 campaign, President Barack Obama versus the Republicans, the caucuses and primaries, I would say go with who you want, and it should be the burden on the person that's running to convince voters, rather than looking at the polls only initially, looking at the top figure and saying, let's go with that person because they're the one leading in the polls, which means they're more palatable to the public to defeat the incumbent president. To me, it just doesn't fly. I have tons and tons more of stuff to say, but I'm going to save that for part 2 and the subsequent parts.